Bookend, Mississippi, greeted autumn with a silence that felt more like a held breath than peace. It was a kind of quiet you'd call charming or quaint, but underneath that stillness, something else was always brewing, especially when the evenings brought that first sharp chill. The wind would pick up, tussling through the trees, and leaves would drift lazily from the old oaks lining 16th and 17th Streets. They tumbled down, one by one, as if with nowhere important to go, until they made North 18th Street their final resting place. These leaves would settle in front of storefronts, which, I must admit, sported Halloween decorations a little too early for some, but never for the children who walked that street. For them, Halloween truly signaled the start of the holiday season. And no, I won't hear arguments for Thanksgiving. That's just a warm-up act for the real event. In Bookend, amber porch lights glowed warmly, and church bells echoed each evening, carrying through town like the lonesome, nostalgic whistle of a freight train. And just past the railroad crossing, where those tracks met the streets, stood the heart of our story. It was the Ayers Building, the most beloved business in town back in 1989. Inside, it hosted another focal point of the community, grand screen video rental, and grand it was, as proclaimed by its faded marquee, which read in block letters, "Be kind, please rewind," though I dare say not everyone followed that advice. You know who you are. Inside Grand Screen, thousands of VHS tapes lined wooden shelves. Action here, comedy there, my personal favorite, horror, tucked away in the back. There were John Wayne westerns, children's movies, and entire television series. Every Friday night, the parking lot overflowed. Every Saturday morning, someone returned a tape late, and every Sunday, Bob Danderfold forgave them. Bob was a man somewhere around 50, though nobody really knew for sure. He had no parents, no siblings, no wife, no children, and no photographs of himself younger than 30. It was simply accepted that Bob had always been there, much like the courthouse, the water tower, or North 18th Street itself. Everyone loved Bob, primarily because Bob loved movies. He remembered everyone's favorite actor, every birthday, every anniversary. He could recommend the perfect film after just 30 seconds of conversation. Kids adored him, parents trusted him, and teenagers often worked for him. Every commercial break during the evening news ended the same way. Bob would appear, wearing suspenders and holding a VHS tape toward the camera. He'd grin and declare, "I'm Bob Danderfold, and when it comes to movies, I'm the real deal." The entire town repeated that slogan. Children shouted it in school hallways, football coaches quoted it after victories, and the mayor even ended a speech with it once. Bob always laughed the hardest. Then, some time later, the commercials changed. It began with a single phone call. A woman from Jackson claimed she'd seen someone standing behind Bob during the advertisement, someone who wasn't supposed to be there. The production company simply assumed she was mistaken. Old VHS tracking errors created strange illusions all the time. But then another call came, then 5, then 23. Every caller described the same thing. A tall, thin man in an old gray suit standing behind Bob, never blinking. The production company reviewed the original master tape. Nothing. Bob stood alone, exactly as filmed. They concluded viewers were influencing one another, a case of mass suggestion, an urban legend. Problem solved, until the station received a videotape in the mail with no return address. Inside was a recording of Bob's commercial. Only this version contained the man, crystal clear, standing behind Bob, watching the camera. No one could explain it. Bookend loved ghost stories. North 18th Street, especially, had collected legends for over a century. A phantom hitchhiker, a woman in white, disappearing footsteps, strange lights in abandoned houses. People came from neighboring counties hoping to witness something unexplained. Most left disappointed. Those who stayed usually stopped talking about it. Bob, for his part, laughed the rumors away. "I'm haunted," he joked. Long as they rent movies, everyone laughed. Bob still laughed the hardest, until closing time. Employees began to notice Bob staying later, long after the customers had left. Sometimes he'd rewind tapes that were already rewound. Sometimes he stared into blank television screens. Sometimes he'd whisper, as though carrying on conversations with someone standing just beyond sight. Then came the production crew. Magnolia Commercial Productions had filmed every grand screen video rental commercial for nearly 12 years. It was a team of 3, director Frank Hollis, cameraman Jerry Vaughn, and sound technician Louise Carter. They were good, practical people who dismissed ghost stories immediately. Frank insisted on recreating the commercial exactly as before. Same script, same lighting, same camera, same store, same Bob. The recording looked perfect until they reached the editing room. Frame 2184. One single frame, not visible at normal speed. A face, gray, expressionless, looking directly into the lens. Frame 2185. Gone. Jerry blamed damaged film. Frank blamed dust. Louise, however, said nothing. Instead, she quietly asked one question. What was the last thing we filmed before Bob? Frank frowned. He didn't remember. Louise did perfectly because she hadn't slept well afterward. 6 months earlier, they'd accepted a documentary contract, not because they believed in ghosts, but because it paid well. The subject was Mercy House Sanitarium, 30 miles outside Bookend, closed since 1958. Officially abandoned, unofficially avoided. They spent 3 nights filming basements, operating rooms, patient wings, the old chapel. Every hallway looked identical. Every room echoed strangely. Nothing happened, at least nothing they noticed, until the final evening. Jerry accidentally left camera 3 recording while everyone packed equipment. It continued filming an empty hallway for nearly 47 minutes. Nobody reviewed it. Nobody had reason to. The tapes went into storage. The documentary aired. Life continued until Bob. Louise drove home. She retrieved every archived tape, loaded the hallway recording, and fast-forwarded. Nothing, nothing, nothing. Then, at minute 43, someone stepped into frame. Not from a doorway, not around a corner. Out of the wall, a man, gray suit, hands folded, looking directly at camera 3. He smiled, then walked toward the lens. The recording ended before he arrived. The room where they watched the footage fell silent. Frank whispered, "We never saw him." Louise shook her head. "He wasn't there." Jerry leaned closer. "Then who filmed him?" Nobody answered. Instead, Louise noticed something stranger. The timestamp. As the man approached, the clock no longer counted forward, it counted backward. The production company hired experts, film historians, audio engineers, restoration specialists. Everyone reached the same conclusion. The tape hadn't been edited. It had changed. Bob finally watched it himself, quietly, without speaking. When the suited man smiled, Bob froze. "I know him," he whispered. Everyone looked at him. "No," Bob corrected himself. "I remember him." Bob described a memory he'd never told anyone, not because it was a secret, but because he'd forgotten it existed. When he was a little boy, someone had taken him to Mercy House. He couldn't remember why. Only fragments, white walls, a nurse singing, a man in a gray suit standing at the end of a hallway, watching him. Then, nothing. His memories ended there. Frank frowned. "But you said you didn't grow up here." Bob looked confused. "I thought I didn't." The room became very quiet. Public records were searched. Birth certificates, school records, military files, driver's licenses, nothing. Bob Danderfold officially didn't exist before 1979. No hospital records, no childhood photographs, no tax history, nothing. It was as though he'd simply appeared. Then came the final commercial. Bob insisted on filming it one last time. Same smile, same suspenders, same VHS tape. "I'm Bob Danderfold," he began. The lights exploded, not flickered, exploded. Every television inside the store turned on simultaneously. Static. Hundreds of screens. One image, the hallway from Mercy House. The gray-suited man walked toward every camera at once. Closer, closer, closer. Then he stepped out, not from the television, from the space between televisions. The air bent like heat rising from pavement, only colder, much colder. The production crew ran. Customers screamed. Shelves collapsed. Thousands of VHS tapes crashed onto the floor. Bob never moved. Instead, he smiled, sadly. "I wondered when you'd find me." The suited man stopped only inches away. Then Bob said something no one understood. It wasn't the building. Everyone stared. It wasn't the tapes. The suited man smiled wider. It wasn't even the commercial. Frank whispered, "What are you talking about?" Bob looked toward him, eyes filled with tears. "You think Mercy House haunted your camera," he said. He slowly shook his head. "It didn't. You opened something. The hallway wasn't haunted. It was unfinished. The camera didn't capture a ghost. It captured a doorway." Silence. Bob continued. "Film doesn't just preserve light. It preserves moments. Most moments fade. But sometimes, when the right place, the right people, and the right lens meet at exactly the wrong time, the recording doesn't remember the past. It records something waiting to come through." Louise suddenly understood. "It followed us." Bob nodded. "No, it rode inside the footage. Every commercial, every duplicate VHS, every television station broadcast, every copy, every playback. Each viewing made the doorway a little wider. The production company hadn't filmed a ghost. They had mass-produced an opening. The gray-suited man had never been haunting Bob. Bob was simply the first person watched often enough to notice him watching back. The creature reached toward Bob. Bob smiled one final time. "The real deal," he whispered, "was never the slogan. It was the warning." Then both men disappeared. Not vanished, folded, like a strip of film burning inside a projector. Everything became silent. Police found no bodies, no blood, no evidence. Only one unlabeled videotape. When investigators played it, it contained Bob's final commercial, perfectly normal, until the last second. Just before the tape ended, Bob looked away from the camera, directly at whoever was watching, smiled, and quietly said, "Pause it." Most people didn't. The few who did noticed one extra frame hidden after the ending, too fast to see otherwise. The hallway from Mercy House, empty, except for Bob, standing beside the gray-suited man, smiling, waiting, as though expecting the next viewer to arrive. Grand Screen Video Rental closed within the month. The building still stands on North 18th Street. The faded marquee remains. The sign still reads, "Be kind, please rewind." Locals claim that on quiet autumn evenings, when the leaves drift across the sidewalk, the old televisions inside sometimes flicker to life. Only for a moment, only one commercial. A smiling middle-aged man holding up a VHS tape. He looks directly into the camera and says, "I'm Bob Danderfold, and when it comes to movies, I'm the real deal." Then, for exactly one frame, someone else smiles beside him. Most people never notice, but if you do, don't rewind, because some recordings aren't preserving the past. They're waiting for someone new to press play. If this story moved you, please share it with someone who enjoys a good mystery.
The small town of Bookend, Mississippi was once home to a beloved video store owner named Bob Danderfold, whose television commercials became a local legend, not for their catchy slogan, but for the inexplicable, chilling presence of a gray-suited man appearing in the background. This story unravels how something filmed became something more than just a recording, suggesting a sinister evolution of media itself.
That's right, Oliver. At its heart, this is a tale that takes the familiar nostalgia of a 1980s video rental store and twists it into something truly unsettling. Bob Danderfold, the man behind Grand Screen Video Rental, is initially portrayed as the quintessential friendly local business owner. He's a man of mysterious origins, yet universally loved for his film knowledge, and his catchy tagline, quote, "I'm Bob Danderfold, and when it comes to movies, I'm the real deal," end quote.
But the story immediately undercuts that warmth with the first hint of unease. Callers begin reporting a figure behind Bob in his commercials, a tall, thin man in a gray suit who isn't supposed to be there. It starts as a simple anomaly, easily dismissed as tracking errors or mass suggestion.
Exactly. The initial reactions are entirely rational. The production company, Magnolia Commercial Productions, checks the master tape and finds nothing. They attribute it to viewer influence, an urban legend taking root. But this is where the story shifts from a simple ghost sighting to something more profound. When an unlabeled videotape arrives, showing the man clearly behind Bob, it becomes undeniable. The recording itself has been altered, or perhaps it was never just a recording.
And the implications of that are disturbing. It suggests that media isn't just a passive reflection of reality, but an active, almost sentient medium. The most chilling detail for me is when the production crew recreates the commercial. They find the man's face in a single frame, 2184, gray and expressionless, looking directly into the lens. It's a fleeting glimpse designed to be missed at normal speed, which makes its existence all the more insidious.
That single frame is crucial. It's a classic horror trope, the blink and you miss it detail that suggests a hidden reality. But what elevates it here is Louise Carter's realization. She remembers filming a documentary at Mercy House Sanitarium 6 months prior, an unofficially avoided place. That seemingly unrelated job becomes the key. The entity isn't just appearing in Bob's commercials, it's a byproduct of a specific filming event.
The revelation about the Mercy House footage is where the story really takes a dark turn. The camera, left recording in an empty hallway, captures this gray-suited man stepping out of the wall, smiling and walking towards the lens. What's more, the timestamp on the footage begins counting backward. This isn't just a ghost, it's something that defies temporal and spatial laws.
It implies a fundamental shift in how we understand these recordings. Bob's line, quote, "The hallway wasn't haunted, it was unfinished. The camera didn't capture a ghost, it captured a doorway," end quote, is the story's core message. The act of filming, especially in a place like Mercy House, didn't just record an image, it completed something, creating a point of entry for this entity. And the mass production of the commercials, every copy and broadcast, widened that doorway.
So it wasn't the building itself that was haunted, but the moment in time that was captured and then replicated. The recordings became a vehicle, a conduit, and Bob Danderfold's mysterious past comes into focus here. He remembers the man from his childhood at Mercy House, a memory he'd forgotten. It's almost as if he was always destined to be the final piece, the one who would allow the entity to fully cross over.
Indeed, the story redefines Bob's beloved slogan, "The real deal," not as a marketing phrase, but as a dire warning. He whispers, quote, "The real deal was never the slogan, it was the warning," end quote, just before he and the entity folded away, like film burning in a projector. It suggests that Bob himself was intrinsically tied to this entity, or this doorway, perhaps even a part of it, having been observed by it since childhood.
The ending then provides the ultimate chilling effect. The unlabeled videotape of Bob's final commercial seems normal until he looks directly at the viewer and says, quote, "Pause it," end quote. The hidden extra frame reveals Bob standing beside the gray-suited man in the Mercy House hallway, smiling, waiting. It's a direct challenge to the audience, implying that by pressing play, we too become part of the doorway, risking a similar fate.
This story plays on our modern anxieties about media consumption and the hidden dangers within technology. It takes the familiar and comforting object of a VHS tape and transforms it into a terrifying portal. The repeated mantra, quote, "Be kind, please rewind," end quote, transforms from a simple instruction to an ironic plea, a final warning not to engage with what might be waiting on the other side of that recording.
It's a masterful blend of nostalgia, existential dread, and a profound reinterpretation of what it means to record and consume media. The story leaves us with the unsettling thought that some recordings aren't just preserving the past, they're actively waiting for someone new to press play. If you found this discussion thought-provoking, consider sharing it with someone who appreciates a good mystery.